harder you cull the doe side, the more bucks you will have, and the better quality bucks you'll have.
Well, that's typical. I mean, just human genetics, dominant and recessive traits.
In deer, non-typical traits are dominant. Typical is recessive. Best way to not only understand the bucks in your area and what you can expect, but then also if you take an area that really hasn't been managed, so let's say it doesn't have the right nutrition or the right food source and they've struggled, okay, this is the base score, this is our base score that we started with. How much can we increase that base score with really, is it supplemental feeding or food plots, but giving them more of what they need? We call it filling in the gaps on the farm. We want to fill in all the nutritional gaps that we can. Therefore, they maximize the genetic potential they have within their system. And that's a thing most hunters don't understand. I even got it around Michigan. Oh, I'm going to go out there. We got a monster, it's 200 inches. No, you don't have the genetics in the area to grow 200 inches. You might have one that grows 150 or 160, but you're just not going to pop a 200 inch out of a 150 genetic potential buck or doe.
Yeah. Jay, you would know that because where you hunt on the river, a lot of them, what did you say, like, you got a lot of deer in that 145 class?
Oh, these are like they're all like that.
Okay. Yep.
And then I got another one that looks just like that. Like,
okay.
He's a little bit bigger, but and then like that deer's the same. They're all the same.
Right.
And then you got like he's kind of goofy. And then you got that one, right? And then that one.
Yeah, but you killed the one down the road at your grandma's, didn't you?
Yeah, but it's not that far.
But it's far enough to be a different, enough of a difference in genetics.
Probably going to think probably a different family group. That's the thing that hunters need to understand is deer, they're not herd animals, but they are family orientated. And that sounds weird, but you got the dominant doe in your area, and if you take her out, it's her daughter that is going to take her place. Because if the dominant doe, if everything works properly, the dominant doe is the best genetic doe in the area. She is going to choose to be bred by the dominant buck in the area. Therefore, their offspring are the best of both worlds, which means the offspring should be better than both parents. I mean, that's the way genetics works. It's even in people. It's in all animals. I mean, if you look at the generations of us as humans, we're getting bigger, stronger, faster every generation athletically. We just are.
Yeah, look at Graham.
Well, trust me.
He's a specimen.
I played baseball, and I threw a mid 85 mile an hour fastball left-handed. I mean, at that time, now I would be a nothing in today's world in baseball. It just they've gotten bigger, better, and faster. I mean, it is what it is. Deer are the same way. But the thing is, with deer, we can actually speed it up as a hunter. By culling the top end off sooner and more often and bringing the young stuff up to get into that breeding, you double the speed of the genetic potential in that area. Now, in the wild, the secret is you've got to get new genetics to come into the area. Well, how do you do that? You lighten the load of what's there, and then they come in. Now, some bucks will cross during the rut, and they'll go to new areas.
Two questions for you on that. One, when you say getting rid of the older and bringing up the younger, are you talking about just bucks and does, just does? What?
Does.
So
don't worry about
harvest the mature does and let the younger does take over the breeding.
Everyone asks, how are we growing such big antlered bucks at such young ages? Because probably 18 years ago, we started breeding the best genetic bucks to the best youngest does. On our farm, when we get 2 sets of fawns out of a doe, she's done. She's obsolete. Because her daughters, if I've done everything right, are superior to her. Why would I keep breeding her? I'm going to put her in the scent collection. I'm going to breed her daughters to even better bucks. And so you get better, younger genetics, which shows up quicker and sooner in younger ages. So it's so hard to get hunters to understand cull your doe side. The harder you cull the doe side, the more bucks you will have and the better quality bucks you'll have.
Now, the second part of that, you said lighten the load so you can kind of, we'll call it recruit new deer. Are you talking about, I'm assuming you're talking about lighten the load as far as there's not as much grazing pressure, and then that whatever food or cover otherwise you have to offer helps recruit those new deer to come in. Is that what you're talking about?
Correct. Let me use a CWD example. Okay, Wisconsin, when they got CWD, the DNR said we're going to go in and we're going to wipe out all the deer in that county. And they tried. They couldn't do them all, but they did the majority. And what happened was all the deer from the surrounding areas all went and just flew in there. Why? Because there's all this food that wasn't being eaten. And then too many deer went into the area, and guess what happened? Part of them went back out. And they literally tripled the size of the CWD area because of it. But what can we learn from that? If we really manage our deer herd on the doe side down to a small quality group, deer from other areas move in, and now you have new genetic combinations. And that's what we do here on the farm. We're just creating new genetic combinations. And every now and then you get a Bruce, you get a Kaiser. When I produced Kaiser, everyone thought I'd lost my mind. The semen that I actually bought was out of a non-typical. But if you took all the non-typical points off him, the typical frame was phenomenal. And I literally looked at that and went, my typical background on all my does can clean that right up. And it did. And Kaiser popped out of that. And everyone thought I had lost my stinking never living mind. I'm going, no, there's something there on that deer.
Well, it's typical. I mean, just human genetics, dominant and recessive traits.
Right.
So if it's a dominant trait in the does, it'll clean it up.
Exactly. But here's what's really interesting. In deer, non-typical traits are dominant. Typical is recessive. To keep typical, you have to line breed to get it to lock in and to stay. Non-typical, you can just breed whatever to whatever, and it just goes more non-typical because it's already dominant. So what I've had to do in 34 years against everybody else in the industry was, like son of a gun, I would breed him back into his daughters 2 or 3 generations. Then I would step out with something completely different, new, and we get this surge of explosion in the genetics on the farm. But we had to breed back into itself in order to lock the typical 6x6 frame in.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. Speaking of antlers, you were talking about the tine length really adding up quick. Everyone likes scoring deer or guessing deer based on trail camera pictures, stuff like that. If you had to pick one measurement on a deer that, like, when you're scoring it on the hoof, like looking at pictures versus after you shoot it and you go up and walk up to it, is there like one measurement that kind of like sneaks up to you and will push you that extra mile? Like normally, I think it's mass. Like sometimes mass can be sneaky and add some inches, like to push you from that 165 to 170 or whatever it is.
I in one sense, I agree. The one thing that people struggle with the most and catches them off guard is absolutely mass. Because it's hard to see that extra inch sometimes, but when you get 4 measurements, you can add up inches there. I think it's the hardest one to see, not only in pictures, but even in real life. What hunters don't understand is that in every area that you hunt, you have 2 or 3 family groups of deer. In other words, that family group, does and bucks, they have certain characteristics that they're going to naturally create in the antlers. Those families breed within each other, and that's line breeding, which we do in our industry. And then they also crossbreed, and that locks it and strengthens. But here's where I'm going to go with this. On your farm, for example, Clayton, if you took a group of bucks that you've harvested off there, or even sheds, and know the inside spread, you can get a baseline score that is pretty much average on that farm. So what it is spread, it's the mass measurement, and the beam length. Those things will stay very consistent in most hunting areas. So now all you have to do, so for example, on the ranch up north, we had an average of 115 inches on an average of our shooter bucks the one year we did this, started doing this. Now, when you're a guide, all you have to do is go out and add all the tine lengths. So you can score a deer on the hoof extremely quick because your base measurements are already accounted for. Now, if you look at a deer and goes, man, he's a lot heavier than the average buck out here, well, then add 3 inches per side, there's 6 inches to your total score. But you still start with that 115. And when I taught the guides to do that, they not only became quicker at scoring deer on the hoof, they became more accurate doing that. So take all the deer, even if you got deer in your area, if you just go and score all of them and you take what we call the base score, everything except the tine length, now you can score all those deer very quickly and much more accurately, even in trail cameras. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so you're taking essentially the mass and spread average, and then you add the tine length.
And beam length.
Is that part of the mass and spread?
That's your base score. So you're taking the spread, beam length, and mass. And if you go and score all the deer that you've shot off that farm and all your neighbors have shot right there in the area, you're going to come up with a number that's going to be very consistent through all of them. That might be, it might be 100, it might be 115. It just now a buck comes walking in, I got 115 inches already on that deer. Brow tines are 5 inches. There's another 10. Now I'm at 125. You add all those tines and you can do it within seconds and go, that deer is going to score basically 165, or that deer is going to be a 180. All because of tine length. You've taken out all the harder measurements because you scored everything over the last 5 years that's been shot in that area, and you have the base average.
Okay. So
hearing it from that way too, though, it kind of makes it seem like when you watch people on TV and stuff, how they like sit there and have a new buck and then they shoot off a score like that. It makes sense.
It's exactly what they've done. They really, truly, they may not have said it, but they know pretty much all of our bucks in this area are going to have this base score, and they're just adding tine length. And it happens very quickly, and it becomes very, very accurate. One of my guides, I mean, you could have a buck run past him, maybe give him 15 seconds to see it, and I guarantee he'd score it within 2 inches of the gross score. He was the best I've ever seen. But again, he knew the base score, so it's just looking at the tines, and he could almost like a photographic memory of taking a picture of it and then go, oh yeah, that's what it scores. So
yeah, and it's like a specific characteristic on an antler, you know.
Yep.
Like you see specific characteristics. It's like, oh yeah, I recognize that characteristic over the last 6 or 7 years. Well,
right.
Just take that concept, flip it into the terms of scoring a deer and getting an average.
Yep.
So when you put it that way, yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
Yep.
Yeah.